We are live. Hey, everybody. Getting my screen set up here. It was not working for me. Come back. I gotta get the chat window going here. Oops. There we go. That'll work. All right, here we go. Hey guys, I think we are all set here. Give it a minute for anyone else is going to join us. So we are done with the Bonanza. The Bonanza project is done waiting to fly. I did all the final checks on that yesterday, did some taxi testing, and it's awesome. I'm really excited to fly that airplane. Unfortunately, our fields are still closed. So hopefully we can get, California will start unlocking things down so we can get back to life as usual. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Airplane's pulling about 60 amps, about 1,400 watts. So it should fly awesome. So yeah, I thought since we're between projects that we could do a little weathering on the A-10 because this airplane, it actually has got some really nice finely molded details and panel lines, and so it actually makes just stock. It's extremely smooth and all of that, so it makes a great base for doing all this kind of weathering that we're going to do. So then. With the Bonanza done, I can move on to the next big project. I've got two projects I think I'm going to work on concurrently. So I will announce those probably this coming week. And then we'll do some live stuff, I think, on them. And then Jeff, I want to be Chris when I grow up. Okay, I don't know. I'm a very flawed individual. But yeah, I think that the FJ4 is going to come on the bench. And then I think that I've got a Freewing F14 refinish project that I want to do. So, all right, those who are joining in, thanks so much for joining me this morning. It's fun doing this kind of live stuff. It's relatively new for me, but really appreciate you guys tuning in to watch, and hopefully it's helpful for you, and you guys enjoy the content. So I want to show you guys. So all right, so we got the A-10, but what I want to show you, the lighting is not very good. There we go. So the airplane's got some really nice, finely molded details. It's got some raised rivet details throughout the airplane, and the panel lines are not huge, which is great. They're nice and fine generally on the airplane, and the finish is super smooth. So this will be a fantastic base for some weathering. And so then the other thing is we can talk now. We'll start getting into I'll start talking about the materials. So when we talk about weathering, what are we doing? We're artificially aging a model. We'll never, ever be able to replicate the years of abuse and sitting out on the sun. And so the I took a look at the chat and I lost the train of thought. So what we're doing is my whole motto or mantra, and I didn't make this up. I read this somewhere, and it's absolutely true. The goal here is to simulate, not replicate. Okay, because we'll never, as I mentioned, we'll never be able to replicate all of those years sitting out and getting into those harsh environments, and just it's just not physically possible to do that. And so what we can do is use all of these different types of paint mediums and materials to try and simulate that aging that occurs as an aircraft gets used day in and day out, year after year. So, so what I like to do, I use a combination of airbrushing. I like to use washes, and so we'll go through the materials here. So for washes, I actually am just using acrylic artist pigments, and so I'm using Folk Art. This is raw umber. You can get this on Amazon. You can get it at Michael's. So I like the brown color because the black, when you're talking about these, now the panel lines are nice and small on this model, but they're still too big for scale. But if you go black on here, it's going to end up looking super harsh. And so I find the brown, it's a dark brown, so that gives a nice kind of combination. It doesn't bring out the panel lines too much, but it brings them out just enough to give something that looks good. So I got the other part that we'll use this for oil stains and streaking and stuff like that. And so when we do that, Tamiya acrylic thinner, and I didn't realize, hopefully I have enough here. Didn't realize I was running low. The other thing is, now I've just recently discovered these. These are Tamiya Panaline Accent Color. This is the dark brown and the black. These are pretty good for this kind of stuff too. And these are designed, these are plastic model washes. And so what you can do is it's kind of drop it in there and kind of wick through and stuff like that. It's great for the really fine engraved panel lines on a plastic model. In the case here, you'll have to kind of brush it on. But what I've used it for is to get some lighter color stains, because like with the black, you can get a dark black color, but it's not going to be super harsh like the pigment might come out. So I've just been kind of experimenting with these a little bit, and they work pretty well. The other thing is Model Masters Flat Black and enamel thinner, and that's going to be for the airbrush. So once we do the wash on here and we do all the oil stains and all of that, we're going to highlight all of the panel lines and the details with some really thin black in the airbrush. The other thing is I've got a nice selection of paintbrushes. All right, I generally use a nice flat wide one for when I start applying the oil stains and streaks and all of that around the model. And then the last thing, so once we've done all of the weathering on here, I'm going to shoot it with, hey Evelyn, thanks for joining in, a flat clear coat. And that's why I've got the canopy mask off, and actually before I spray it, I'll have to mask off the wingtip lights too. But I've just recently been using this Rust-Oleum 2x clear coat, and actually I find it works pretty darn well. I was really impressed by it. It stinks like all get out, so spray it outside, but it's a non-yellowing UV resistant clear. So when you're looking for clear coats, and I can't stress enough, when you're doing weathering and this kind of stuff, a final clear coat just really blends everything together, and it really helps improve the look. But when you're looking for clear coats, non-yellowing is what you want. All of the plastic model clear coats that I've found, like the Testers, Model Master, the Testers, dull coats and stuff, it yellows. I've used it on models in the past, and it didn't take very long to yellow at all. So this spray's real nice, and I've been really happy with it. So now the other thing is airbrush. All right, so I'm using, this is a Grex airbrush. I've got a link in the description. The whole setup, this is a pretty expensive setup, but it's a fantastic airbrush. They sell a kit. It's the airbrush with the compressor, give you guys a close-up of the compressor. This is a fantastic compressor. I had one that I used forever. It ended up giving up the ghost maybe after 10 or 15 years of use. So I got a whole new setup, and this thing, it's quiet. It works fantastically, and I've been really happy with it. Ultimately, like the best materials here are the ones that work for you guys, give you guys the results that you're looking for. So, you know, you don't necessarily have to go all in on an airbrush like I did, but I can't recommend enough having an airbrush. Get my setup back together here. So, you know, you don't have to spend a ton of money on an airbrush, but you do need something to do what I'm going to show you here. You do need some sort of an airbrush, but again, you don't necessarily have to. It's just one extra step. So yeah, let's start getting into some of what we're going to do here. Let me know if you guys have questions. I'm trying to keep up with the comments as best I can. So I'm going to start showing you the mixtures. I'm going to zoom in on the camera a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to start out with, we're going to take the raw umber color and we're going to do a wash over all of the airframe. And but what we're going to do is we're going to thin this down. And I forgot. So the folk art pigments, I haven't really had much luck finding a good thinner for it, if you will. I actually was playing with it last night. I found, and I'd heard about Windex using it, and I found that actually the Windex works out pretty darn well, because if you try and use water, the water doesn't really wet out the paint that great. The Tamiya thinner doesn't really actually reduce this pigment down very well, but it does clean it up great. So I found that the Windex, believe it or not, whatever's in there, works great at kind of reducing this down into a consistency that sprays well and wets out well onto the surface. So that's what we're going to use here. So let's see. I had a question. Yes, Scott, this can be done without an airbrush, like the whole wash process. You can actually just take the mixture that we're going to make here and you can brush it on and then you just wipe it off, and I'll show you that process. But if you don't have an airbrush, don't worry, you don't have to necessarily have one. Let's see, there was another question. How do you take decals off without damaging foam? That is a very excellent question. I haven't really found one yet. Now I've heard that if you use ice packs, you put it on the decal and kind of freeze it. I've heard that will lift it up generally. So one time I'd heard about like those compressed air cans. If you hold it upside down, it'll freeze the sticker. But that worked at lifting up the sticker, but it left all of the residue on the surface. So that didn't really help me out hugely. So ultimately, I've just been kind of peeling them off and fixing the damaged areas with spackle. Because when I do lift them off, I'm gonna refinish the thing anyways. So the filler gets used no matter what. So question: did I polyacrylic this first? I did not. I'm just gonna apply this over the stock paint. All of the mediums here will not react with the paint, but you do have to be careful with the enamel thinner, right? You don't want to be wetting out a paper towel with an enamel thinner because that will lift up the paint. The acrylic, you can apply this all day long, no problems at all. Okay, so let's make the mixture. Let me zoom in the camera. Let's see here. I'm going to have to reposition this a little bit, so I apologize. All right, let's see if that works. Let me zoom out just a touch. Right there. Okay. All right. First things first, we've got this is the raw umber acrylic pigment. So I'm just gonna, this is a plastic mixing cup. I'm just gonna dump some in here. And then got my trusty Windex. Now the key is to not thin it too much. So I'm gonna do a little at a time here. And I like to use the ends of my paintbrushes to mix this stuff. So the other nice thing is this kind of creates a nice little sludge down at the bottom of the cups that you can use for washes later. So you have to mix this pretty well. Actually, I think I might need a little bit more of the Windex. All right, there we go. I think that'll work. All right, you'll see. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. So I'm finding that the Windex reduces this pigment really well, so that's a good thing. All right, so this is my second airbrush. Let me pull my little airbrush cart forward. So I found this cart at Costco, and it's been fantastic. It's got all my paints in here. I can set my airbrush on it, and it's been really great. All right, so got the airbrush. We turn it on. I don't even know if you can hear it in the video. Yeah, just lightly. All right. So a quick note on the airbrush itself. All right. So this is a pistol grip handle. Bruce Beamer was asking about acetone. What was your question related to acetone? Let me know, and I'll try and answer that. You don't want to put acetone on here because it will lift up the paint. So let me know more specifically what your question is related to that. I use acetone to strip these models down to the bare foam. Okay, so we've got our mixture here. I'm just going to dump this in here like that. Oh, I forgot. I got sidetracked. So the way that this works is this is a double action airbrush. It's in the pistol grip configuration. I really like that. There's also the top triggers, but a double action airbrush means that the more you pull on this trigger, the more paint you're going to get out of the gun. Okay. Now you can adjust that maximum flow rate by adjusting. There's a stop here. So if I adjust the needle through the back here, it'll adjust that maximum spray width. Okay, so I want a fairly wide width. One other thing I want to mention about the airbrush, so that they have magnet, they have different types of, I don't even know what these are called, tips, if you will, that you can put on and off. So brand of airbrush compressor, Tony, this is a Grex airbrush and compressor. I actually have a link in the video description. All right, so you can see I'm getting good flow, and actually I might need to thin it out a little bit more. Let's see what we're going to get on the model. All right, so I'm going to start on the bottom, because if I screw up, it's a lot harder to see on the bottom, and the bottom is always the dirtiest anyways. So let's see how we can get you guys a little bit better look. I'm going to zoom this in a little bit more on the model. All right. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to start on the tail here. See what we get. Actually, no, consistency looks good. All right, so the whole idea, we're wetting this out, and then we're going to wipe it off. All right. Actually, I might have thinned this a little too much, but we'll see. So I'm going to wipe this off now in the direction of the airflow. And what's going to end up happening is the paint is going to stay within those panel lines. And actually, I think I do need to, might have thinned it a little too much. But all right, so we're just wiping this off in the direction of the airflow on the flying surfaces. And that paint just collects and stays within these details. You got these raised rivet details, which look really cool, and which collect the paint really nicely. So it's really subtle right now. This is a really subtle effect. And actually, I think what I need to do is zoom it in a little bit more for you guys. Let's see. It's going to be kind of hard to see in the video. I'm going to zoom this in a little bit more. So that way, I'm going to do just this section of the fuselage so you guys can get an idea of what this looks like, okay? All right, so same kind of thing. Just going to spray. All right, so I'm going to spray in whole back fuselage here. Oops, out of paint already. It's going to go pretty quick, it looks like. All right, let me get a fresh paper towel. Lots of paper towels here. Those are a hot commodity these days. Hard to get at times. All right, there we go. Just wiping this off. Now, hopefully you can see in the video the paint is collecting. It's very, very subtle in here. Like I said, you don't want it to be too overdone. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little of the acrylic thinner. And then we can just wipe it off. Get a little bit cleaner. All right, that's it. So I'm gonna zoom this out a little bit. I gotta remake the paint, our little wash here. All right, Windex. Oops, add a little too much, so I'm going to add a little bit more paint. All right, so let's see, any questions? Paper towels, the new toilet paper for many. I need to add a little bit more paint in here. All right, this should get us through the whole model here. Let's see. So I had somebody drop some tape, peel after. That's a good point. Let me, I'll put a paper towel down or something when we do the wing. It's a really subtle effect. Truthfully, you don't want to go too heavily on this because it just won't look right. When when we're talking about weathering, my whole mantra is less is more, because it's really easy to make a really, really dirty airplane that usually doesn't quite look right. It's a whole lot harder to make something that looks really authentic. So you want to get this to the point where you're like, it could use just a touch more weathering and then just kind of leave it there. But, you look at pictures of the real airplanes, because, we're trying to kind of simulate what they get and how dirty they get. A lot of stuff collects on the bottom, and they get so dirty because what ends up happening on the ground, all of the stuff tends to collect in the bottom of the fuselage, and then it leaks out the panels, and so it'll yeah, I lost my train of thought. I saw Scott's comment there. I was like, oh boy. All right, so we've got the mixture. Get it back, get more paint in the airbrush. All right, so what I'm going to do is we'll do this side of the wing, and then maybe that'll show a good comparison if I do one wing versus the other wing, and then we'll see what happens. All right, so we're going to go through and get all of these panel lines here. All right, so you can see we've got this whole section of wing. Bruce, that's a good question. So I'll come back to that in a sec. So again, we're just going to wipe this off in the direction of the airflow, and we can come back and add more or less as we want. If we add thinner to the paper towel, that'll remove some more of the material. But I like to get the material in like the creases and things of that sort, because it will collect there. All right, so when I'm doing weathering and things of that sort on a larger model than this, my process is very much the same. Now, when I'm painting the airplane, a really large scale, I'll use a spray gun. I have an automotive touch-up gun that I'll use, and I use lacquer paints for that. And so it's a little dirtier than I want, so I'm going to clean this up with the acrylic thinner. So then when I get to the weathering on that model, I'll use an airbrush, and I'll use the process exactly as what I'm doing here. It's all the same. And now I might, depending on how fine the panel lines are, usually like they're panel lines that I scribed myself. So they're really thin, fine lines. And so in that case, I might actually just take the raw acrylic pigment and brush it in over the model on the panel lines. But then I clean it off exactly the same as what I'm doing here. All right. All right, so we get a little bit on the inside here. All right, now I hope that the lighting works in here. Let's see. I'm gonna have to back this up. Let me see. Let me zoom this out a little bit. right, so I don't know if the lighting is working at all, but this side has the wash. Actually, let me do this. All right, so this side has the wash. This side does not. There's a really subtle dirtiness on this side of the wing versus this side, which has none at all. So hopefully that's coming through. Oh, and when we're done here, I'll spray the clear coat once it's all done, and then I'll post pictures on my Facebook and Instagram pages so you can see the final result. But really happy with the look of this. So we're going to go to the other side now. All right, so I'm going to zoom this back in again. Sorry about this, guys. Here we go, right there. That looks good. All right, time to airbrush away again. Let me tilt this up here. All right, so you can see that's kind of what we're looking at, and now we're going to clean this all off. These like raised details, let me lower this. There we go. These raised details that you get are awesome because the wash will collect in that, and it's creates a really nice look. And we'll play some games with that too once we start getting to like the oil stains and stuff. Lots of paper towels on this stuff. Generally want clean paper towels because what ends up happening is it'll transfer additional paint if you got a dirty paper towel on this. All right, so that's a good first pass. Now I'm going to come in with the thinner, another paper towel, lots of paper towels. And last night, as I was prepping for this, I actually painted the struts white. So we'll do some wash work on the struts as well. You can see this is only picking up the acrylic. It's not pulling up any of the paint or anything like that. Let me see. Getting kind of a glare. All right, need more thinner. Yeah, Bruce, this Grex airbrush setup is just fantastic. The compressor is extremely quiet. I can sit here and have a full conversation while I'm airbrushing, and you'd never really know that it was going. All right, that's pretty close, I think. I like to use this process because I mean, you can do a lot of airbrush shading and things like that. Generally, that doesn't tend to look right. It really depends how it's done. But the fact of the matter is that airplanes get dirty because stuff collects in those seam lines between all of the different panels and stuff. And so this is a pretty, authentic way, if you will, to do this. But again, we're artificially aging the airplane, so we'll never be able to replicate it, but we can make it look pretty close. So I'm good there. Come around, let's do the fuselage. Let me see if I can raise this up a little bit. Actually, I'll use my paper towels. Sacrifice my paper towel roll here. Grab a couple extras so I can tilt this up here. Yeah, lighting's kind of harsh. I apologize for that. Is this airplane worth the money? Honestly, man, I was extremely impressed with this airplane. It's such a fun little airplane that just flies so good. Now, I'm not one to tell you if it's worth it. I've been really happy with it. I really enjoy it a lot. So I would buy another one if this crashed in a heartbeat. And truthfully, it flies that good or that well. Pardon my English. That's funny. Why does he want to make a new plane dirty? That's a question of the day. Because the real ones spend about an hour clean, and then as soon as they fly, it's all that dirt collects. All right, let's see. So I'm going to do, it's going to be, we'll call that good on the bottom. And put a little bit of thinner on here. Clean it up completely. Now, what you do get when you do this is it does tend to kind of give it a stained look, which is kind of what we're looking for. It will clean up completely if you work it pretty hard and use a lot of the thinner, but you do want some of this to remain. All right. I'm going to call that good on the bottom, and we'll come back to that. So now we get to do it all on the top. So I'm going to start on the nose. I'm going to work my way front to back here. Danny's asking if I spray poly on it after I've completely weathered it. Yes, I spray a clear coat. In this case, I'm going to use the Rust-Oleum 2x matte clear. Really like this stuff. I've been pretty impressed with it. So that's what I'm going to spray over it once we've done that here, or once we're finished here. And I won't do that while we're live. Oh, ran out. Once we get all of the weathering done, I'll spray the clear once we finished up here, because that stuff's stanky, and I got to do it outside. All right. So one of the cool things, I'm not doing it. There we go. One of the cool things is they've got all this little rivet detail all around the airplane. And so it's going to collect some of this wash, which is really good, give it a really nice look. So on the fuselage, I'm going to do something a little bit differently, okay? So instead of wiping it off in the direction of the air flow, like on the flying surfaces, wings, tails, the horizontal stabs, all get wiped off in the direction of the airflow. The fuselage, however, I'm going to wipe it off in the direction of gravity because a lot of what you see that collects on the fuselage is a result of it sitting out on the ramp, just getting beat by the sun and the elements. And so fortunately, my stickers are peeling up a little bit. All right. So I'm going to come in with some thinner. Actually, apologize, guys. I'm going to turn the camera just a touch. There we go. So I think I might put the gear down and make life a little bit easier. Let me put the landing gear down on this. Got my battery in here. See, I painted them white. Looks pretty good. I got an X-Acto in there. There we go. I think this will make life a little bit easier for me. Unplug. All right. So I still need more clean this up a little bit more. All right, so now let's get the wings done here. We'll get the wings and the nacelles. Use Mr. Clean Sponge to wipe. Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Saves money on paper towels. All right, I think we got all. Let me get the nacelle. All right, more of the same here. Almost. I thought this would go a little bit quicker. Don Gallagher, am I going to do paint chipping? One of the things about like modern jets is there's not a whole lot of paint chipping that occurs when you look at the airplanes, like pictures of the real airplane. So I'm not going to do any paint chipping at all. I'm only going to do like the washes and stuff. I do have my P39 weathering tutorial just about done. That's going to be posting. Not sure exactly when, but I do have some. I do show paint chipping in there, and I just use a dry brushing technique to do that. All right, I think I'm good there. All right, keep going. Tin foil, I use it like masking paper, not tape. Wraps. Oh, tin foil, that's a good idea. All right, so now we got to get the tails. Get the inside here. And then I don't know if you can see some of the, it's kind of hard to tell, but the model's got some raised rivet detail all around it. So again, we're going to wipe this down vertically, and you can see, looks like you can see some of what's collecting in here. Do that on the inside here. It's a little difficult to maneuver around the servo. All right, get the tail. All right, now back here. And so when you look at a full-size airplane, the way that the weathering happens, or as it collects, you know, the airplane gets dirtier as you go further back. So just want to keep that in mind. I'm not going to do as much cleanup necessarily in the back, but this is just one step in the process. So let's see, my thinner go. Oh, here we go. There we go. Actually, let's see. All right, gonna call that good. Now we'll get the other side done, and we go on to the next step here. And so I cleaned up a little bit more than I wanted to here on this pylon area, so I'm gonna add a little bit more back because I was getting a nice collection of paint and kind of streaking happening off of the these rivets that are here. Actually, I'm going to let that sit, and then I'm going to come back to that. So now let's come around to the other side. Karim S., if I had to repaint the camouflage, what type of masking tape would I use? I would use frog tape. This is the stuff here. I've gotten really good results masking foam airplanes with it. It hasn't been lifting up the paint too terribly, and generally it won't lift up the paint at all. What I'll do is I'll take it and I'll put it on my shirt before I put it onto the model, and I've had pretty good results with that. All right, a little thinner. Almost there. All right, guys, if you're just joining in, doing a little weathering here on E-flite A-10, the new 64 millimeter. What I've done is I've got an acrylic pigment that I'm using. I've thinned it out with some Windex, and I'm spraying that on the model. And so now I'm cleaning it off with paper towel and I've got some Tamiya acrylic thinner. All right, good with that. A little bit much in here. So somebody was mentioning about the paint chipping on the tails. You're probably right. I didn't do a whole lot of research before I started this. Usually I will do a lot of research and try and figure out. So you may be right. And so for paint chipping, I would just do a dry brush technique. I can show that if you want near the end. You'd let me know where the chipping should occur. I can show that. Hey, Corinne, you're from France. Thank you. Thanks for joining in. My family and I went to Paris last summer, had an absolute blast. We loved it. All right. Almost there. Oh, we're gonna have to make more. You're probably right, Don, about the paint chipping. Generally, when I see airplanes, they tend to touch up paint on these airplanes fairly regularly. So like regularly accessed panels that do chip will usually get touched up. So I'll have to do some research. I can show a little bit of that on the leading edge when we get to it. Vallejo Master Air Cement color. Yeah, I've heard good things about the Vallejo paints. I haven't actually tried them. Are they acrylics, Winterwolf? I don't recall. I think they might be acrylics. Our local hobby store carries them, and I've been wanting to try them. Just haven't had a reason. I've got a whole drawer full of like old Model Master and Tamiya paints. Clean this leading edge here a little bit. So hopefully you can see in the video kind of what's happening. It's hard because of the lighting in my shop, but as I mentioned, the effect that we're going for is really subtle. Here we go. Oh, I just dinged it. Stupid fingernails. I'll have to add some paint chipping there. Yeah, so Robert, if you can see, that's kind of the goal. That's what this wash really does. It's really subtle, but you can see that you get this real authentic looking streaking that's coming off of those little rivets. That's partly why I wanted to do this, because it really does. I mean, that's an extremely authentic result that you get on the real airplanes. And this airplane's got all kinds of this stuff all over it, which is really cool. I should take this up as a hobby. All right. Just a couple more things, and then we can go on to the next step. Get the tail here where you guys can see it. I'm running low on paint. Don't need very much. Let's see if I can get a little bit more out of this. Need more. So the process that I used on Robert on that the C27, I think is what you're mentioning, exactly the same as what I'm doing here. The only difference is, instead of airbrushing the wash into the panel lines, I brushed that in on that one. So that dried on me, so I need to get a little bit more thinner. Yeah, that worked out pretty well there. And let's get the tails. Are you guys talking about real fly? Did I see that? I guess that's the only flying we can get around here. Hopefully you guys are able to still do some sort of flying. All our stuff is closed. All the parks, everything. They've locked it all down. All right, I think we're good. Here. All right, let me zoom this out. We have to reposition the camera. All right, hey, I'm back. Okay, so we applied the acrylic wash. Honestly, that took me a lot longer than I expected it to, so I apologize for that. I'm going to do a little bit more cleanup all around the model, but then we'll start applying some oil stains and streaking and stuff like that. But because of the like all of the fine rivet detail and stuff like that all around the model, that wash really collects and provides a really nice authentic look around the whole airplane. So I think I'll pull the camera down and try and give you guys some close-ups. Let's see. Looks like I'm still a little dirtier than I want to be here on the fuselage. All right, let me pull the camera down and see if I can show you guys some of the details. I apologize for the steadiness here. All right, I've got lots of cables connected to this thing, so here we go. All right. So here we are on the wing. All right, you can see just really light highlight in the panel lines. Okay, but what I really want to show you all right, is here in this rivet detail. You can see, right, we've got these streaks coming back off of this, and that's exactly what we're looking for when we do this. And so we want to highlight the panel lines. Or I'm going to put the camera back up. So we want to highlight the panel lines, right? And then, but also that result, because we have this nice molded detail on this airplane, you get some of that extra goodness that really collects. And that's where, like, if you're doing this on an all composite model with that has all this fine molded detail into it, man, that stuff really starts to pop when you do this. If you guys, there are a couple guys you should check out on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, there's Philip Knoll. The guy is amazing. He's in the UK. Pinnacle Aircraft, I think, is his company. You should definitely follow some of the work that he does. It's pretty amazing. And then who's the other? Trond Hammerstein. I can't remember his Facebook page, but Trond Hammerstein builds a lot of the models for these scale competition guys that are just insane. They're just ridiculously amazing to look at and behold. And they're these massive airplanes too. One little spot here that I want to get a little bit more. Let's see. Did it freeze? I'm not sure what you guys are. I think you're talking about real flight. All right, there we go. Calling that good. So now we're going to take this another step further. I got to get my foam pad back out. Okay, so now, come on. There we go. Okay, so now we are going to, we've got all of the mess up, and I'm seeing some of what I need to clean up. All of the mess, you know, in the panel lines. And so now, another part of the process, when you look at the bottoms of these airplanes, man, they get extremely dirty and oil soaked and stained. And notice I missed some spots here. So I gotta have the cover on. All right, I dropped paint onto it because I forgot to put the cover on. Okay, sorry, I'm just wrapping some of this stuff up. Some of the areas that I missed, and I'm gonna keep, I got the two airbrushes here, so I'm gonna keep some of the paint in that gun, and then I will all right, good enough. Okay. So now we're going to take the acrylic pigment. I'm going to zoom the camera back in, and we're going to start adding all kinds of stains and streaking and all that on the bottom of the airplane. So I'm going to zoom this in. All right, and I'm going to have to reposition the camera. So now let me see if I can let me grab a couple of paper towels, see if I can angle this here in a way that is meaningful for you guys. So let me turn the camera just a touch. There we go. Okay. So now, making a mess. Just dumped my paint. Good times. All right, clean that up. So I have this paint mixture here, and what ends up happening, you can't, it's kind of hard to see, but it creates kind of a sludge down at the bottom because it doesn't fully reduce the paint. So I'm going to see what happens. It might be a little too thin. Let's see. It might work. Okay, so it's a little too thin. So I'm going to take the raw pigment. And I'm just going to put it on the top of a Dixie cup here. And I'm going to take this raw pigment in the brush, and I'm just going to apply it, locally here. And I'm going to streak this back with my hand. And really, when you look at the A-10, the further back you go, the dirtier it gets. All right, so I don't know if you can see this. Let me turn it up here. So you can see what's happening is we're now getting this staining, and that's so characteristic on every military aircraft gets this kind of, and actually I'm not going to go too heavy with it, but some of the pictures I've seen, man, they get crazy dirty, especially as you go further back on the airplane. So I'm going to brush it around some of these raised details, bring them out a little bit more. Let's see. Better than the guy in TV painting. I hope you're not talking about Bob Ross, because there's nobody better than Bob Ross. All right, I'm going to add a little bit up here, just local. So I'm going to go smaller near the front of the airplane. Actually, that's too much. So what I just added here, right here, is more than I wanted on there. And actually, it turns out there's not even a panel line. I thought there was. So I'm going to clean that up. And I'm going to do it again. We're doing happy weathering. That's it. Happy weathering. Okay, so I'm going to come back here and do some work on the wings here. We've got these raised details. So I'm going to do a little bit off of those. Right, so I put a little thinner on the towel. So now I'm going to take a little bit of the black. You got to be really careful with the black, but not all of this is brown on the airplane. So I'm going to take some of the black with a different paintbrush, and I'm going to be a lot more. I'm going to apply it a lot more lightly. Is you do get this color variations. Actually, that's a little bit more than I want. Here we go. You know, this is all kind of arbitrary, truthfully, but it's, you know, the best way is to take a look at pictures of the real airplane. And I mean, these airplanes get crazy dirty underneath. It's nuts. All right, so I don't want to go too heavy with the black. I just want some color variation in there. So the other thing that we can do is we just apply a little dot here on a panel. You can add a little streak there. Little streak there. And that's kind of it. I don't want to go too crazy with this. I'm going to add a little bit here on the nose. It's bigger than I want. Just a touch. All right, I got to do a little more cleanup, but give you guys an idea, maybe. So hopefully you can see we've got staining, you know, all on the underside. I'm going to do a little bit on the tails. The tails definitely do get pretty dirty because, you know, you've also got the exhaust back here. But the other thing, I want to add some more harder kind of stains underneath on these nacelles. All right. I'm going to call that good on the underside. Actually, no, I'm going to add a little bit here. There we go. Do I want a little more black? I'm going to add just a touch more black. Just here. All right. I'm going to call that good. All right, so let me zoom this out a little bit, and then I'll give you guys a closer look. Get the lighting here. All right, so you can see we've got all of the staining happening on the underside. We've used a variation of colors. Yeah, I'm way behind on the chat, guys. I apologize. Let's see. All right, would you do some shoot around the gun? Don Gallagher, what is your question? Hey, somebody said barbecue. I'm in. What time and where? Hey, Robert, thanks for joining in. All right. Weathering powder. I have heard of that being used, but I have not used it myself. Yes. So Don, once I'm done with all of this, I am going to come in with the airbrush and we're going to do some shading. And that's when we'll do the powder stains with the gun. All right. Artist charcoal works also. You do have to be careful with that though, because it will, you definitely have to clear coat that. All right, so now let's do some on the top side. Now for the wash kind of stains on the top side, I'm going to do, Tony or Curso, do I paint control horns and push rods? I do indeed. Obviously I didn't paint this model, so I wasn't going to paint them. You try and find a matching paint. But yeah, on my other stuff that I build, I paint them all the time. I paint servos even when I have to. Okay. So I want to, let me zoom this back in a little bit. All right. So I'm just going to go around, do some kind of random streaking here. How do I avoid brushes getting dry? They get dry on me all the time, actually. I just add more material, and then once I'm all done with it, then I'll just clean it. But yeah, it will tend to dry on you. I just get more material. All right, so I don't want to go too heavy on this because it already looks pretty good based on the wash. So I'm only going to just do a few areas here, just some random stuff. So I'm going to go vertically here. Again, I don't want to go too crazy with it, because I actually do really like the look of it with just the wash that's on it. Eyeshadow for weathering plastic models. That's not a bad idea. I imagine that probably works pretty well. I'm going to add something here. Happy streaks. I'm going to, let's see. Generally pretty happy with how it looks on the top side. Yep, pastel chalks, Hal Rufner, that is correct. I've mostly used artist charcoals. I use those on plastic models a lot. They work well on a large size airplane like this too. The difficulty is that you have to clear coat them for sure. Let's see, just some random stuff here. Just one more here. All right. I'm gonna call that good. I don't want to go too crazy on this because it has a nice dirty look to it already. Hey, Super Veronica from Liverpool. Thanks for joining in, man. Appreciate that. All right. I'm gonna zoom this out. All right. So are there any questions so far? Let me know. I apologize. I was a little absent from the chat. You know how it goes. You set out to do a task, and then it always takes you longer than you think it does. That's kind of where I was at. So, all right, I want to do some additional cleanup on the fuselage before we go to the next step. How many flights does this bird have? I've probably got, oh boy, a couple dozen flights on it. I flew it a bunch for the review when I was doing that. You know, the thing about it is on my reviews, sometimes they take quite a bit longer than I would like to get them done. And in some cases, it just has to do with life. But other cases, it has to do with, if I'm not fully happy with how the airplane flies and my setup and stuff, I won't put the review together because I want to make sure that I have, you know, that information for you guys. So sometimes it takes me a few outings to be able to get that done. And unfortunately, there's no outings happening now. So Let's see. Okay, so I got to clean this side up. It's a little bit dirtier than I wanted it to be. So that's the beauty of the acrylic, is you can clean that up. And actually, there's a couple raised panels over here I want to highlight on the wings. Right here. There we go. We'll get the other side. The street in front of my house is always a runway. I wish it was, man. Get a nice wide street, but unfortunately not wide enough. We do have a park just down the road from us, which is great for UMX stuff, but they've got it all blocked off because of this coronavirus social distancing stuff. Like, it's seriously like cement barriers out in front of the driveways to get into the park. Okay. All right. Done. I could fiddle at this all day. All right, so the next step, the final step, is we're going to do some airbrush shading. All right. And I need to reposition this camera slightly and kind of cut my head off a little bit. All right, now we've done the wash and all of the panel lines. We've done some of the streaking, and I focused most of that on the underside because that's where a lot of that stuff collects. So now we're going to finish it up, and I'm going to do some airbrush shading over all of the panel lines. And so I'm going to I've got the Model Masters black here, and I'm going to thin it way down. Okay, like the consistency of dirty thinner, basically. Mickey B, yeah, do weathering under artificial light. That is correct. I don't ever do this outside. I appreciate you bringing that up, because I don't ever do weathering outside in the sunlight, because as he mentioned there, it ends up washing it out as you apply it. And so then when you bring it inside in artificial light, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that is like way too dirty. So always inside under artificial light and for the best success. Because if it looks good inside under that lighting, it'll guarantee you to look good outside. But if you do it outside and it looks good outside, and you're like, oh, that's pretty good. You bring it inside, I guarantee you it's going to be like way too dirty. So as I mentioned, and I've seen some of the guys in the chat, less is more on this stuff, always. All right. I need a plastic cup. Spell check. What did I misspell? All right. So I'm just cleaning my cup out with some lacquer thinner. There we go. All right. Excellent. All right, so we got a plastic cup here. I've got, well, actually, I didn't need that. I forgot. I have a premix already. After weathering, could I seal this with polyacrylic? Yes, I could. My cap's fused on. Maybe I won't be using this. But yeah, you can seal it. You definitely want to do some sort of a clear coat after you do the weathering. I'm going to be using the 2x matte clear from Rust-Oleum. Really like that. There we go. But yeah, you could use polyacrylic. You want to use a matte color or a flat color. You don't want to use a gloss or anything like that because it just won't look right. Unless, of course, the airplane is a high gloss. But if you do all this heavy weathering on a high gloss airplane, it won't look right either. All right, so this is just a flat black. All right. And I'm going to thin it like way down. As I mentioned, like the consistency of dirty thinner. Oh, I forgot to weather up my landing gear struts. We'll come back to that. All right, so it's more thinner than paint. All right. Yeah. All right, so I've got my mixture, the flat black mixture. I'm going to put it into the airbrush. So this is a second gun that I've got. Haven't actually used it yet, so hopefully it works. Worried about durability. Let's see, regarding the polyacrylic. Oh, so you mean to stiffen up your the airframe? The polyacrylic will help stiffen it up for sure. Any kind of clear coat works, so you can use any of them. How old is my shirt? Actually, it's only just a few years old. Target, I collect graphic tees. Target and Kohl's generally have a nice selection of them. Hey, Dean Cooling, thanks for tuning in from the UK. Appreciate that. All right, let me check. Yes. All right, so it's spraying way too wide for me, so I'm gonna adjust the needle here. There we go. Perfect. All right, I'm going to start on the bottom again. All right, let's see. White dwarf paints. I've never heard of that. Let's see. I'm going to zoom it in again and actually, yeah. I was like, oh, maybe we need to, let me retract the gear so we can see better. There we go. Unplug it. It's got to unplug it. There we go. All right, let me zoom this in. Did I put mixing in the elevators with the flaps? I did. I don't remember how much. It is in my review article, and I also have my DX file there as well. I do have a link in the description. I do have a link in the description to my review video, so you can check that out there. Let's see. Asking to repeat, but have you flown the A-10 yet, please? How is it? Looks epic. Dean Cooling, yes, I have flown this. I've got probably about, 24 flights on the airplane. I did my full review. I do have that a link to that in the description. The airplane flies awesome. I love how this airplane flies. It's really such a fantastic flyer. It's super, it flies super clean, and yeah, it's got great performance. It's really fun. All right, we've got black, flat black in the gun. So what I'm going to do is just a real broad stroke over the panel lines. All right, so one of the things here, maybe I should be doing this like, it's hard to get you guys the right angle, but these chaff dispensers here, I noticed on pictures that, you know, they tend to get pretty dirty, and like this whole landing gear pod area tends to get pretty dirty. So I'm gonna, again, just broad strokes on everything. All right, so once I've done that, I've got a Scotch-Brite pad here. Just gonna lightly burnish this all down, and that helps just blend it all. And that's pretty much the whole process. So let's go around and do the whole airplane. See if I can angle this up. There we go. All right, so really subtle on this. Super subtle, because otherwise it just doesn't look right. So yeah, that's as much of the paint that I'm going to put on. The thing about this, I thin this down so much is because I don't want the black to be super heavy on here, because it really just doesn't look right when it is. But the other thing is, it's easier to add more than it is to take away. So if you've added too much, then it's really quite difficult to remove it. So that's where, little at a time, if you want more, add more, and then yeah, that's it. So got my Scotch-Brite. All right, we got to get the tails. Robert Ortleff, I really appreciate you tuning in and for your kind remarks. I really appreciate that. This will be on my channel. You can come see the final result. All right, so let's get the tails. All right. All right, I think I'm going to call that good on the underside. I need to come around and do the nose. Samuel 333, do I have an F22? I do not have an F22. I would love to have an F23. All right, so I need to do a little bit on the front. Okay, so here's where we're going to add the gunpowder stains, okay? So let me turn this way. And so what I'm going to do, since this is so thin, I'm going to just slowly add to get the look that I want. All right, and that's as far as I'm going to take that. I don't want it to be super heavy. I can always add more. I need to let it dry to see what it's going to look like too. Okay, again, with the Scotch-Brite pad. You know, and the thing is, you can tailor these results to whatever it is that you're looking for. So if you want more shading or less shading, it's really all in what you're looking to get, the look that you're hoping for. So I do want a little bit more on these engine pods, or not, landing gear pods, I mean. All right, got to let that dry. We'll come back to that. So now we'll do the upper side. And again, we're just highlighting all of the panel lines.
System idle.
Forgot to turn off my radio. Okay, so you get an idea. You should be able to see in there the shading. I don't want to leave it like that because it is a little too much. So again, we're just going to Scotch-Brite this down. And in this case, since we're on the fuselage, I'm going vertically. Let's see. Amit, the core, I'm not exactly sure. Saw your channel on the E-flite A-10. I'm not sure if that's in there. I don't remember. But I don't recall making a model for that. Let's see. All right. So you can get a better idea, right? It's been toned down a bit, and I still need to tone it down more. But what it does is it gives some color variation to an otherwise just kind of same color kind of wash. So get the wings. Okay. Realized I forgot to get the bottoms of the nacelles. That's right. Do that later. All right. So now nacelles. I will be the first to tell you I am not a great airbrush artist, like at all. And so I use really broad strokes on this as I'm doing that. All right, let's get the tails. Ran out of paint. Always put the lid on. All right. Okay. So I've done the nacelles, I've done the tails. I'm going to go around and finish up the rest of the airplane, and then we'll Scotch Brite it all. Actually, no, take that back. Let me just do this now. All right, there we go. That was quick. All right, now the other side. This is an extra fine Scotch Brite pad. It's the gray color, or maybe it's green. I'm not sure, but it looks gray to me. All right. Let's see. The plane looks bigger. All right, so you can see what we got there. Let me get the other areas, the nacelles. All right, I think that'll do it. Let me widen this up, and I'll talk through it a little bit while I burnish that down. And I need to crack open my garage too. All right. Should have a well-ventilated area. Okay. I'm going to burnish this down. So, Reckham Roy's RC. Let's see, dollar for dollar. Is this A-10 worth the money I really wanted? I was going to buy it at Hobbytown. Honestly, like, this is a really fantastic airplane, and I feel that the price is really reasonable for what you get. It flies amazing. And like the flight times, the power, like everything about it is really a lot of fun. So I really enjoy the airplane a lot. And so I kind of leave it up to others to say if it's most certainly worth it, but I've been really happy with it. I can only talk to my own personal experiences. All right, so we went through and we highlighted all of the panel lines with the black. And so just burnishing it down, blending it all. FedEx needs to hurry. Yes, that's right. All right. There are a couple spots I missed that I realized I forgot the bottom of the nacelles. So let me get those real quick. All right, almost there. All right, almost there. Flat, black, thin down. That is correct, John. Thin to the consistency of like dirty thinner is what I like to call. And then all right. I think I'm going to call that good. So it's a little bit more than I want on these lights areas. So I will come back in with the Scotch-Brite. And the other part of this is I still have pylons and weapons to do, and I'll do all the same thing that we've done here. But I think we're done. Let me put the landing gear down, and then I'll show you a little bit of what I like to do on the landing gear. Now the landing gear just don't look right. They're way too clean. Let's see. So what I'll end up doing on the landing gear is I will take the raw pigment that we have here on the cup, and I'm just going to brush this on here. And then I will just wipe it off. Landing gear usually get quite dirty. So that's what I'll end up doing on those. Let me turn this over. Let me give you guys some close-ups. I'm going to pull the camera down, give you guys some close-ups. John, yes. Raw umber. Okay, apologize. There we go. Get some good lighting here. All right. So you can see on the wing. Hopefully you guys can see some of the subtlety of what we've done. All right, I'm going to put this back. All right, so that's it. Honestly, this took me a bit longer than I thought it would, so I apologize. I don't want to keep your guys' time too long, but let's recap a little bit of what we did, right? So we started out, we used the raw umber color. This is the folk art raw umber color. I like to use the brown all over the airplane versus a black, because black can get to be a bit too much of a contrast. So we got the acrylic there, thinned it down with some Windex, worked out fantastically. And so then we sprayed it all over the panel lines, and then wiped it all off in the direction of the airflow on the flying surfaces, and then wiped it off vertically on the fuselage. And then when I needed, I cleaned it up. This is Tamiya acrylic thinner, so that pulls any of the pigments up really easily. So you can tailor your results based on, you know, how much thinner you use or don't use or whatnot. So we did that all around the airplane. Airbrush is just a Grex double action airbrush. And so really happy with these airbrushes in their system. But from there, once we airbrushed that, wiped it all off, went through, added some streaking on the underside, right? Give you guys a close-up view there. Kind of hard to see based on the lighting, but it's kind of washed out. And then, so we used just the raw acrylic pigment for that, and we applied it with a paintbrush, wiped it back with my finger or a paper towel, and then can clean it up with the acrylic thinner super easily. And you can use that to tailor the look that you're going for, and then finished it up by airbrushing Model Masters enamel flat black all around on the panel lines and the rivet detail, and then burnished it down with a Scotch-Brite pad. This is my whole process for models this size all the way on up to large models. This is what I did on my A-7 that I won the Scale Masters with. I took that one a step further as I did some panel fading as well, but which I didn't show here. I've shown in the past, but you really have to have a good base color, so that way you can lighten the base color, and then you can do your fading that way with a lightened base color. I guess I could have done something like that here, but excuse me, I just wanted to do something quick and easy. So there we go. I don't know if you guys have any questions. See if I can catch up on the chat here. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I apologize it took as long as it did. But it's, you know, the weathering is all about subtle results, but ultimately it's what gives you the results that you're looking for, whatever you're happy with. Pearl Jam 26, I love your screen name. That's awesome. Less is more, right? You want to take it to the point where like, oh, I could just add just a touch more, and then you want to stop, is kind of my approach. And then also we want to simulate, not replicate. That's where I'm at. So colors on a navy blue, that's a good question. For the blue paints, you have to go lighter colors versus darker colors. So you could, it's a good question. I haven't tackled that. So Danny Murphy's asking, where do I get my FS number paints in larger quantities? So I used to get my paint from Frazee lacquer paints, but then Sherwin-Williams bought up Frazee, so now I get it from Sherwin-Williams. But in order to get it mixed to the colors that you want, I have to go to a certain location. But it's getting a lot harder to get those lacquer paints. But I really love spraying lacquer. It sprays extremely nicely. And let's see, where's my touch-up gun? Go ahead. And then I spray it with, this is a DeVilbiss automotive touch-up gun. So that's what I like to spray the big stuff with. And it works really nicely. So yeah, on to, anything cool hanging in the rafters. I know that's kind of been a thing. I didn't plan very well for that this time. Let me see. Might have to get my ladder. Hold on, I'm going to go off screen for a sec. All right, let me know if you know what this is. I got one more coming. There we go. All right, you guys should be able to guess this one. Move the hog out of the way. All right. Yep, F4, baby. It's a jet hanger. Is one of my dad's designs. And then any guesses on this one? Should be pretty easy. The other one is a ME262. F4, largest distributor of MIG parts. I love it. That's awesome. Next year's master's project, Danny Murphy. That's probably going to be the big FJ4. You can pull that down. Here we go. So I think this is going to be the next master's project. I'm getting ready to tool up and start building this airplane. So the landing gear arrived, the retracts. So I just need to get going on it. So yeah, this is. I'm debating long and hard about how I want to power this airplane. There's a good chance that I'll end up putting a Schubler 120 millimeter fan in it, but it really wants a turbine. So we'll see what happens. I'm still debating. The problem is that if I go turbine, there's only so many places that I can fly it around here. Southern California is not super friendly to turbines generally. I can fly it at my home field, and I could obviously fly it at like the Scale Masters, but any of the local events that I go to don't allow turbines. So I wouldn't be able to fly the airplane at any of those events. So I don't know. I'm really debating. But if I put a 14S 120 millimeter setup in here, I should be able to get a really good performing airplane with really good flight time. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I'm doing a lot of research right now on the airplane, starting to figure out what color scheme, what I can document, because I have to have a clear vision at the beginning of a project, so I know what it's ultimately going to look like. Not a whole lot of information out there on the FJ4, unfortunately. So trying to find paint schemes that I can document, it's really kind of challenging. So it's been an interesting prospect. So yeah, go electric and show us how it's done. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I'm heavily leaning electric because frankly, I want to be able to fly the airplane at any of the events that I go to. So it's a big model and it's going to be big and impressive. Actually, let me show you guys the landing gear. Hold on. Oh, got to go off screen for a sec. So you can't see it in this view, but I have a whole rack of, of stuff over there because every project that I do, I end up collecting, documentation and all sorts of stuff. So here are the main gear for the FJ4. And here is the nose gear. So I just got these a few weeks ago. And that was big. That was been the big holdup on the project. So now that it is here, it's time to get this guy going. So these were made by Ed Tobias at rccrafters.com. He's a really good guy. He makes really nice landing gear. So, and then it's his own design on the retracts. So it's a pneumatic retracts. Yeah. John, you're not far off. Large EDF is almost as expensive as turbine. You are most certainly correct, especially looking at running a 14S Schubler fan. Yeah, it's about, the fan and the speed controller are about half the price of the turbine, but then you start dealing with the batteries and all of that stuff. Yeah, the costs do add up for sure. So this is going to be, I think, the next big project. My Skyray is unfortunately going to wait a little longer. This is actually intended to be a kit ultimately by my folks, we're hoping. But we got to get the thing flying. So this is one of two, I think, right now. So, Don, it's fried chicken time. Where's my invite? Love fried chicken. Hey, thanks for joining in, Don. So I got this project, and concurrently, I'm going to be working on this, as well as I've got a Freewing F14 that I want to do a full refinish on. So these are going to be the two big projects going forward from here. So I've done some, you can't tell, but I've done a whole lot of cleanup in the shop, at least on the table, and I swept up my floors, and so we're ready to go. So, all right. I think we've had enough fun. I've monopolized enough of your guys' time. I really appreciate you guys following along. Apologize it went as long as it did. Kareem, I've got the weathering video for the P39 posting. Actually, I have it done and it's scheduled. I can't remember. I think it's going to post the beginning of May. I've got a bunch of stuff kind of in the queue that's posting. So be on the lookout for that. I did a video and a full article for it. So, all right, guys. Hey, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. And yeah, go have some fun in the shop. Get some flying in if you can. Otherwise, get some building in. It's a weekend, and I hope you're having a good time and staying safe, guys. So, all right, man. Take care. Have a good one. Thanks for joining, guys. We'll see you next time.